Hello everyone. In the last session on multimedia, we had learnt about the basics of multimedia and its advantages and disadvantages. We had also learnt about various audio and video file formats. In today's session, we learn about multimedia peripheral devices. In these multimedia peripheral devices, we have two kinds. One is input devices and the other one is output devices. Here you can see that the various multimedia peripheral input devices include keyboard, joystick, scanner, barcode reader, optical pen, and output devices include headphones, headset, laser printer, plotter, inkjet printer, speakers, etc. And there are some devices which form the intersection of both input and output devices, like the digital cameras, CDs and DVDs, fax, web cameras, etc. Once again, these are the multimedia input devices. To formally define a multimedia input device, it is any peripheral used to provide data and control signals to a computer. This allows the user to put data into the computer without any input devices. A computer would only be a display device, which would not allow the user to interact with the existing features of the computer. So keyboard is one multimedia input device. It is one of the primary input devices. It looks very similar to other keyboards that we use, like electric typewriters and some other additional keys, with some additional keys. Keyboards allow a computer user to input obviously letters, numbers, and other symbols into a computer. Here, we know that keyboard uses a particular arrangement of buttons or keys, and we need to press that particular key to use that. These are some of the various types of keyboards. Standard keyboard, laptop keyboards. We have some gaming and multimedia keyboards. There are other variants like thumb-sized, virtual, and foldable keyboards. This is how a laptop keyboard looks like. Most of you might have used a laptop keyboard. This is a typical QWERTY keyboard where the letters start from uh, all the letters on the keyboard start with this combination, that is QWERTY. Here in laptop keyboard, some of the symbols are condensed into fewer buttons because the space is less. Because of the space uh, scarcity, some symbols are condensed. These are gaming and multimedia keyboards. You can see here. These are designed for convenience of the gamers, and these types of keyboards provide the required controls on the keyboards, like backlighting facility. So these are small thumb-sized keyboards, which are very small in size. You can compare them with the size of the hand. These are used in personal handheld devices like smartphones. These are also useful where there is limited workspace available. So this is another advanced kind of keyboard called the virtual keyboard. These are not actually physical keyboards, but they are the simulated forms by making use of certain softwares. We feel that there is a keyboard here. Actually, there is no such keyboard, but this works and the input goes into the computer. And there are some foldable computers also, foldable keyboards, which are extremely good when you are traveling. You can simply roll them up and then unroll them again when you need them. So the next input devices are some pointing devices. It is a hardware input device that allows the user to move the mouse pointer to select items on a display screen. Types of pointing devices are based on rolling a ball. Sometimes you can, when you touch the surface, that pointing device works. So the example is a mouse, which works by rolling of a ball and also touching a surface. The example of pointing devices are mouse and trackballs. So this is how a mouse looks. You might have all used it. A device that controls the movement of cursor or pointer on a display screen is a mouse. It is important for graphical user interfaces because user can simply point to options and objects and click a mouse button. So these are some of the pointing devices. Pointing device, that is the mouse. Types of mouse include mechanical and optical. Here in mechanical mouse, it has a rubber or a metal ball here in this place, which you can place this here, and this is the cover. Then the optical mouse, on the other hand, uses the laser technology to detect the mouse's movement. So this is a variant similar to a mouse, which is called a trackball. This is another pointing device. It is like a mouse which is lying on its back. If you reverse a mouse, then it looks something like a trackball. To move the pointer, you have to rotate that ball with your thumb, your fingers, or the palm of your hand, and it does not require much space to use it. Based on the touching surfaces, there are various pointing devices like touchpad, graphic tablet, touch screen, light pen, stylus. So this is how a touchpad looks. This is there on all your laptops. The mouse on your laptop is called a touchpad. It is a small touch-sensitive pad used as a pointing device on some portable computers. By moving a finger on this touchpad, you can move the pointer on the display screen. So this is another pointing device. It is a graphic tablet. It is also called a digitizer or digitizing tablet. Graphics pad, drawing tablet is a computer input device that allows one to hand draw images. You can draw something here on this device, which is more comfortable for us rather than drawing on the screen using a mouse. You are using a pen to draw on this graphic tablet, and this image will be replicated on your computer window. And this is very similar to drawing on paper using your pen or pencil. So these are touch screens. It is an electronic visual display that can detect the presence of a location of a touch, that is something like the touch of your fingertip within a display area. The term generally refers to touching the display on the device with a finger or a hand. And some other pointing devices include light pen. It is a computer input device in the form of a light sensitive wand, which is used in conjunction with the computer's CRT monitors or CRT display. This allows for user to point to display objects or draw on the screen in a similar way to a touch screen, but with greater positional accuracy. There is more accuracy when you use a light pen rather than when you're using a touch screen. And this is stylus. It is this pen-like thing that is held in his hand is nothing but the stylus. It is a pen-shaped instrument that is used to input commands to a computer screen or a mobile screen or tablet. So based on moving stick, there are some pointing devices like the joystick or gamepad. These are used mostly for gaming. So this is the joystick. This allows an individual to move an object in a game, such as navigating a plane in a flight simulate, or there is a racing game where cars are racing, and you can use this to give movement to the cars. So this is another device which is used for gaming, another pointing device which is called gamepad, game controller. It is also called joypad or video game controller. There are various names for this device. It is a peripheral device designed to be connected to a computer or console gaming system. It has multiple buttons, as you can see here, and may have one or two mini joysticks also here. So these two are the mini joysticks which helps to give movement. There are some imaging and video input devices which are used to digitize images or video from the outside world into the computer. Examples include digital camera, webcam, optical scanner, 3D scanner, fingerprint scanner, barcode reader. So this imaging and video input devices here, the example is that of digital camera. You can see the digital cameras here. So a camera that stores the picture or video, it takes the electronic format instead of film. You don't use the film anymore. Earlier cameras, we used to have the film. Here, there is no existence of film. These have become the camera solution for most users today, as the quality of the picture they take has greatly improved and as the price is also decreasing. So this is web camera. If you don't have camera on your laptop, you can put this as an add-on to your existing camera with the help of Bluetooth or an USB port, and this will give the additional functionality to your laptop. It will act as the web camera. This is an external webcam. It is a hardware camera connected to a computer that allows anyone connected to the internet to view either still pictures or motion video of the user or the other object. And some imaging and video input devices. One example is optical scanner. It is a hardware input device that allows a user to take an image or text and convert it into a digital file, allowing the computer to read or display the scanned object. There are two types of scanners. One is flatbed scanner and the other one is handheld. So this is flatbed scanner. This looks like a bed and it is flat. That's why it is called flatbed scanner. And you also have these handheld scanners, which are popularly used in libraries, digital libraries, when they want to scan the barcode present on the books. So this flatbed scanner is used mostly for scanning of documents. So this is a 3D scanner which scans all the three dimensions. This analyzes a real-world object or environment to collect data on its shape and possibly its appearance. The collected data can then be used to construct digital or three-dimensional models. So this is a fingerprint scanner, which is present even on your mobile phones these days. There is a sensor placed which sensors your fingerprint. Is a hardware device that verifies a user or enters password information by scanning their fingers. It is a hardware device that verifies a user or enters password information by scanning their fingers. This is a barcode reader, like I told you. This is used widely in digital libraries where the barcodes that are present on the books are scanned. This is also a hardware device which is capable of reading a barcode and printing out the details of the product or logging that product into a database. There are some audio input devices like microphones and MIDI keyboard. These are used to carry out recording or give input commands, audio input commands through audio signals to a device. So this is a microphone. This is also a hardware peripheral that allows computer users to input audio into their computers. So this MIDI keyboard is typically a piano style user interface keyboard, which is used for sending musical instruments digital interface signals to a computer. MIDI stands for Musical Instruments Digital Interface. This is sent to a computer that is capable of reproducing an array of digital sounds or samples that resemble traditional analog musical instruments. So this is a MIDI keyboard which looks something like a piano with some digital features added to it. Now we completed the input devices, various multimedia input devices. Moving on to multimedia output devices, let's formally define what output device is. Any peripheral that receives or displays output from a computer is called as an output device. Computer hardware equipment used to communicate the results of data processing carried out by a computer to the outside world. These are some of the examples of output devices: monitors, printers, speakers, projectors. So this is a old monitor here, old digital monitor. This is a monochrome monitor because you see only two colors, black, and there is another color that is greenish in color. It is a type of CRT, that is cathode ray tube computer display, which was very common in the early days of computing, that is 1960s till 1980s. These monochrome monitors were very popular. They are still widely used in applications such as computerized cash register systems. These display only two colors. That is the reason it is called monochrome. Chrome means color, mono means single, one for the background and one for the foreground. The colors can be black and white, green and black, or amber and black. In this picture, we are seeing green and black on this monitor. So the next type of monitor is the color monitors, which can display 16 to over 1 million different colors on the screen. Color monitors are sometimes called RGB monitors because they accept three separate signals, that is R for red, G for green, and B for blue. Coming to the types of monitors rather than monochrome and color, we also have various types based on their looks or how you see them. The first category is cathode ray tube. Depending on the display, this cathode ray tube monitor, there is liquid crystal display called LCD or light emitting diode called LED. These cathode ray tube monitors were large, heavy, they used to produce heat, and they were inexpensive. So these are the main features of the cathode ray tube monitors. So from here, moving on to LCD, you see that there is a drastic change in the look. The dome that used to be there behind the screen has gone. It has disappeared in the LCD monitor. That is why it requires less space. Obviously, it has become lighter than the CRT monitors, and the power consumption of these monitors is also low. But these are expensive and they provide limited viewing angles. The next type of monitors after CRT and LCD are the LED monitors. These also require less space like LCD monitors. They are also lighter. They are very expensive when compared to CRT and LCD, but they provide higher contrast and better viewing angles than the LCD. These are advanced versions of LCD monitors. Coming to the features of monitors, screen size is one important feature. The screen size is the actual amount of screen space that is available to display a picture, video, or working space. Desktop screens are usually 14 to 25 inches in diagonal measurement. If this is the screen, the measurement is this diagonal line that you see, 14 to 25 inches. The other feature is aspect ratio. It is the fractional relation of width of display area compared to the height. That is, width is 4, height is 3, width is 16, here height is 9. Then the monitor's aspect ratio is set to be 4 is to 3 or 16 is to 9. So this is the aspect ratio. This is the width and height. This is the screen's monitor's aspect ratio. So these are some of the extra picture area that you get when the monitor is of bigger size than usual 4 is to 3. Next feature is the display resolution. Most modern monitors can display 1024 by 768 pixels. This is the SVGA standard, and some higher end models can display 1280 by 1024 or even 1600 by 1200 pixels. So these are some standard display resolutions. So you can see the two screens here based on display resolution. This has lower resolution, whereas this has higher resolution. So this is more clear when compared to this. Higher the resolution, there is more clarity. Same is the case with when you buy your mobile phones, when you see the camera feature, if the resolution is better, then obviously the picture quality will also increase. So the next feature is refresh rate. It is the number of times in a second that a monitor draws the data. Number of times the monitor keeps fetching the data is called the refresh rate. This is measured in hertz. The standard refresh rate is 75 hertz. So even when you're buying a television, you have to look for this particular feature. The refresh rate of the television is very important. It is nothing but the number of times that a monitor draws the data per second is termed as refresh rate. What does this 75 hertz mean? This means that the monitor redraws the display 75 times per second. And this flickering monitor can contribute to eye strain and headaches. There should be no flicker if the monitor is of good quality. If the refresh rate is higher, then the monitor will flicker very less. So here you see that there is some flickering. That is why there are two images in the same picture which have merged because of monitor flickering. It contains the previous data as well as the data that has to come next. Next feature is that of color depth. It describes how many colors that can be displayed on a monitor screen. Common color depths used by monitor are 4-bit, 8-bit, 16-bit, and 24-bit. 4-bit color depth has 16 colors, that is 2 to the power of 4. 8-bit has 256 colors, 16-bit has 65,536, and 24-bit, which is called True Color Monitor, has 16 million colors in it. So this is a EGA monitor versus VGA monitor. Here the number of pixels are higher. Here the number of pixels are very less. So that is the difference color depth can make in monitors. So moving on to next device, output device, that is the printer. It is an external hardware device which is responsible for taking computer data and generating a hard copy of that data. Printers are one of the most used peripherals on computers and are commonly used to print text, images, and photos. There are two types of printers. One is impact and another one is the non-impact. So coming to advantages and disadvantages of impact printers, these are less expensive. They can make multiple copies with multi-part paper, but they are noisy because this impact print printer strikes paper and ribbon together. This strikes paper and ribbon together, which generates a lot of noise to form a character, and the sound is similar to that of a typewriter. But the print quality is also lower in some types of impact printers, and it also produces poor graphics, and sometimes it doesn't provide any graphics, and also the printer is very slow. These are the advantages and disadvantages of impact printers. So one type of impact printer is the daisy wheel printer, which is similar to ball head typewriter. It's very similar to the olden days typewriter. It has a plastic or metal wheel on which the shape of each character stands out in relief. And the hammer presses the wheel against ribbon, which makes an ink stain in shape of the character on the paper. So this produces letter quality print, but they cannot print graphics. So this is how a daisy wheel printer looks. All the characters are present on this, and when you press on that particular letter is printed on the paper. And the next type of impact printer is dot matrix. This creates characters by striking pins against an ink ribbon. Here, and each pin makes a dot, and combination of dots will form characters and illustration. This is how a dot matrix printer looks. And the next category of printers is, we finish with impact printers. The next category is the non-impact printers. It uses ink spray, toner powder, or it can also be inkless. And coming to advantages and disadvantages of impact printers, non-impact printers. These non-impact printers, because they do not make any sound, they are quiet, and they can handle graphics and often a wider variety of fonts than the impact printers. Non-impact printers use ink sprays, toner powder, and they are sometimes are inkless. These are quiet. They can handle graphics, which was not possible in impact printers, and they can also take up variety of fonts compared to impact printers, and they are fast. But the disadvantages are they are more expensive, they occupy a lot of space, and the cost of maintaining is high. One type of non-impact printers, which is toner based, is the laser printer, which looks like this. So whenever you go to a Xerox shop or a printing shop, you will find a laser printer which looks just like this. This is a non-impact printer which rapidly produces high quality text and graphics. They are often used in corporate, school, and other environments that require print jobs to be completed quickly and in large quantities. This is a multifunction printer which is also toner based, and the by multifunction it means that the same printer performs many functionalities. It can perform printing, scanning, it also acts as a photocopier, and it also acts as a fax machine. This multifunction printer is an office machine which incorporates the functionality of multiple devices in one. A typical multifunction printer may act as a combination of some or all the following devices like printer, scanner, photocopier, and fax. There is another type of non-impact printer which is called inkjet printer. These operates by propelling variable size droplets of liquid or molten material onto almost any sized page. They are the most common type of computer printers which are used by consumers. These inkjet printers are used in all households or small offices. Next type of non-impact printers are the thermal printers. These are inkless printers. These thermal printers work by selectively heating regions of special heat sensitive paper. These printers are commonly used in calculators and fax machines. And although they are inexpensive and print relatively fast, but they produce low resolution prints. So these types of prints you can observe whenever you order on Amazon or Flipkart, the bills that are generated are usually from thermal printers, or even in malls, the bills that they give, they generate it using this thermal printers. These are all inkless, but this quality is low. Hence, after a few days, like 1 month, if you keep a particular bill, you will see that it fades. The print quality is not good. That is one disadvantage of thermal printers. Coming to the features that you should look for whenever you are looking for a printer, is one feature is printing speed. The printing speed is measured in characters per second, and it can also be measured in lines per minute or pages per minute. So these are three units of measuring printing speed: CPS, that is character per second; lines per minute or pages per minute, LPM and PPM. So the next type of output device is the plotter. This is also called a computer printer for printing vector graphics. These plotters are used in applications such as computer aided design, such as diagrams, layouts, specifications for sheets and banners. These are capable of producing color drawings in a matter of minutes. Plotters differ from printers in that they draw lines using a pen. Plotters are considerably more expensive than the printers. So this is how a plotter looks. These you will find whenever you go for a shop which prints huge banners posters, etc., they make use of plotters for printing. The next type of output device is speakers. These are hardware devices which are connected to computer's sound card that outputs sounds generated by the computer. Speakers can be used for various sounds meant to alert the user as well as music and spoken text. So one type of speakers is the headphones. These also output the sound from the computer. They are similar to speakers, but they are own on the ears. So only one person can hear at a time. So the next type of output device is the projector that can take the display of a computer screen and then it projects on a large screen or a wall, and the large version of that particular display is projected onto the flat surface, which could be a screen, projector screen, or even a plain wall. Projectors are often used in meetings and presentations so that everyone in the room can view the presentation. There are three different types of projectors. Just like the monitors, even the projectors can be classified as CRT, LCD, but there is one more category called the DLP. CRT, as usual, stands for cathode ray tube, LCD for liquid crystal display, and DLP for digital light processing projectors. Oh, so this is the cathode ray tube projector. These were used in the earlier days. Here you can see three different output panels, which are for red, green, and blue colors. They use three different tubes, for each of the primary colors, that is red, green, and blue. Due to their large size, low light output, and frequent need to converge and align the images projected from each of the three tubes, these are no longer commonly used. They are not that popular. So the next is the cathode ray tube. These also have long service life. They maintain good brightness at 10,000 hours. These are both considerably larger and heavier when compared to LCD and DLP projectors. And these CRT projectors require far more time to set up and adjust when compared to LCD and DLP based projectors. But you should remember one advantage is they have long service life, but the quality is not that good, and also the setting up feature is, it takes a lot of time and it is not that easy. So the next type of projector is the liquid crystal display projector. These work by utilizing polarized mirrors that pass and reflect only certain colors of light. So this causes each channel of red, green, and blue to be separated, and then it is internally reconverged via a prism after passing through an LCD panel that controls the intensity and saturation of each color. They can achieve greater brightness at lower energy consumption, and they are smaller than the CRT projectors. DLP projectors look something like this. They are very compact, and they can be classified as one chip or three chip. One chip DLP projectors can produce more than 16 million colors, while three chip models can produce more than 35 trillion colors. DLP projectors can be classified as one chip or three chip projectors. One chip DLP projectors can produce more than 16 million colors, while three chip can produce 35 trillion colors. These projectors reproduce more natural and lifelike images when compared to the CRT and LCD projectors. So with this, we come to the end of input and output multimedia devices. Moving on to multimedia security, why exactly is content protection a must? We learn in this topic. Here, digital technologies facilitate new experiences for content users in consuming, authoring, replicating, and delivery of digital contents. However, prevalence of digital replication devices and explosive growth of internet usages also result in serious copyright infringement problems at the same time. To avoid that, we there is a need for security. So there is digital rights management, which takes care of digital security. This enables the secure exchange of intellectual property, such as copyright protected music, video, or text, in digital form over the internet or other electronic media, such as CDs, removable discs, or mobile networks. So here the sequence is from the creator, it goes to the publisher, then it is aggregated before it is distributed, then it goes to the retailer and finally reaches the consumer. This is the procedure followed by the digital rights management. This is a chain of hardware and software services and technologies governing the authorized use of digital content and managing the consequences throughout the entire life cycle of that particular digital content. We can do the content protection by making use of certain technologies, but we can also use enforcement law, etc. And some of the mostly used technologies include watermarking. In watermarking, there are various types like robust, fragile, visible, and also fingerprinting. These are all the watermarking categories which enable content protection. And there is also cryptography, which is another way to protect the contents. In cryptography, we use certain cryptographic algorithms or protocols. We make use of certain hashing algorithms. We use symmetric ciphers, digital signatures, etc. And there are also some rights languages which enable content protection. And those languages include MPEG REL, ODRL, and XRML. So digital rights management takes care of many things, like it controls the copies, the unauthorized distribution of copies. It also does identification. It also does credential authentication, conditional access, as well as integrity checking. It also does usage rule specification followed by interoperability. So this is how the DRM content server looks. Content repository and the product information goes to the DRM packager, which is then goes to content package. Here the content package contains the content and metadata. Then it goes to the DRM controller. He does the rendering of applications as well as identity. Then there is some licensing happening here through keys and rights. Then finally it goes to the license server, where the rights encryption keys are present and the DRM license generator generates the license, and this is the sequence in which the DRM reference architecture works. So the three major components here are the content server, client, and the license server. Let's see what watermarking is. This is how a traditional watermarking works. It is an important mechanism applied to physical objects such as bills, papers, garment labels, product packing, etc. This is hidden from the view during the normal use and only become visible by adopting a special viewing process. The watermark carries information about the object in which it is hidden. So this is the sequence of digital watermarking where the original content goes to the embedding module, and then this becomes the marked content after the fidelity checking happens. Then the processing or attacks takes place. Then this becomes a marked content. Then we can extract from this particular module and then check whether this is the original content. So by doing this, we can identify whether the content is original or a copied one. The next category is data hiding, watermarking, and steganography. Here in data hiding, steganography is one part and watermarking is another. In steganography, we can have imperceptible or visible steganography. Even here, we can have imperceptible or visible watermarking. So these are some of the desired properties of watermarking. It should be it should have high fidelity, strong robustness, it should have large capacity, blind detection, and also low computational complexity. What is the importance of watermarking is this helps for owner identification, it acts as proof of ownership, it does broadcast monitoring, transaction tracking, content authentication, copy control, device control, and also it can identify the metadata association. So here in this cryptography versus digital watermarking, here in encryption, we do encryption, whereas in watermarking, we do embedding. After encryption, we have to do decryption, whereas here in watermarking, we do detection. So this is the difference between cryptography and digital watermarking. When finding the proof of ownership, textual copyright notices cannot be used to solve the copyright dispute since they can be easily forged. So you'll have to register every work to a central repository, which is very costly. It costs around $30 per document. This is where watermarking can be of use. You can also perform broadcast monitoring via TV or radio advertisements. In 1997, a scandal broke out in Japan. Advertisers are playing for thousands of commercials and that were never aired. So this broadcast monitoring can be performed by human watchers. We can also do passive monitoring and also active monitoring. When transaction tracking has to take place, watermarks recording the recipient in each legal sale or distribution of the work is important. If the work is misused, that is, it is leaked to the press or illegally distributed, then the owner could find out who the traitor is. Visible watermarking is often adopted in this application, but invisible watermark is even better. One common example is that of the currency notes. You can see there are some visible watermarks as well as invisible watermarks also to identify forged versus the original currency. To perform copy control, encryption is the first and strongest line of defense against illegal copy. We can overcome an encryption mechanism. First, we have to decrypt a copy without a valid key, which is theoretically infeasible for a well defined system. Then we have to obtain a valid key, that is, reverse engineer the hardware or software. For example, the DECSS program against the CSS protecting DVD. Then we have to go legally obtain a key and then pirate the decrypted content. We can also use watermarking in copy control, combining every content recorder with a watermark detector. When a copy prohibit watermark is detected, the recording device will refuse to copy. The system has been envisioned by CPTWG and HDMI to protect DVD as well as audio. There is some problem of adopting watermarking module in recording devices because of the increasing cost, and also it reduces the value of the devices. And the solution to this is to include the requirement for a watermark detector in the patent license of CSS instead of enforcing it by law. So the task performed by this DRM is it desires to achieve interoperability in violation with the requirement to protect the value of the content and the rights of the rights holders. In the DRM, we have IPMG as well as MPEG series. This MPEG 4 describes a set of standard interfaces to proprietary intellectual property management and protection, which is the IPMP systems. This is at the very core of the MPEG 21 specifications. The MPEG 21 specification looks something like this. In 2000 June, MPEG started working on the definition of enabling normative technology for the multimedia applications of the 21st century. This MPEG 21 is the multimedia framework which is used to enable transparent and augmented use of multimedia resources across a wide range of networks and devices. It also supports transparent and highly automated transactions, especially taking in account the digital rights management and also multimedia access and delivery using heterogeneous networks and terminals. Coming to intellectual properties, there are four basic types of intellectual properties. The first is patents, the next one is trademarks, there are trade secrets, and finally copyrights. These copyrights are the ones that are central to the DRM. Patents help protect novel and unique inventions or processes. After you patent your invention, nobody can use it without your permission, and you have to essentially have the unlimited monopoly for a period of years. The details of your invention will be disclosed to the world. After the patent time expires, anyone can freely use your invention. So that limited time frame provides you with an incentive to create new inventions, and the time limit also ensures that everybody can benefit from your inventions in the long run. Let's see the interaction between patents and DRM, how they are connected. Patents are not generally the object of DRM systems and applications. However, patent rights do play an important role in the creation of DRM systems and applications. The next part of intellectual properties after patents is trademarks. Trademarks protects logos, trade names, and symbols used to identify a company's products or services, which could be sounds and smells in addition to graphical symbols. The strength of a trademark lies in the answer to the question, what association does the trademark generate in a consumer's mind? The licensing of trademarks is more close to rights sales, and it is less suited to the application of DRM technology. So the next part of intellectual property rights after patents and trademarks is the trade secrets. This may consist of any formula, pattern, device of compilation of information which is used in one's business and which gives a person an opportunity to obtain an advantage over competitors who do not know or use it. And the last type of intellectual property is the copyright, which are central to DRM. You might have heard about stolen music and streaming video, which are all related with infringement of somebody's copyright. A copyrighted work must be an original work of ownership. One who copies another's original work does not own copyrights, but authors of independent and identical works do, which is fixed in tangible medium of expression, and you are able to reproduce or otherwise communicate. So let's see what are all the benefits of having this copyright law. For a certain number of years, copyright holder has the exclusive right to reproduce the work, modify the work, distribute, perform, as well as display the work publicly. In multimedia security, multimedia authentication plays a very important role. You might have seen whenever you are accessing an app or your a bank account or any other account, there is username and password which acts as an authentication for the particular multimedia. And there are 3D passwords also these days, which is a combination of patterns, your biometrics, and also some digital keys. Let's see what authentication is. It is the act of confirming something what it claims to be. If you are claiming that it is you who is using the phone, authentication will check whether it is really you who is trying to access your mobile phone. The example is giving identity card to a student of a particular institute. Main types of authentications include passwords, PIN, smart card, swipe cards, or biometrics. When I say biometric, you should know that it is a combination of two Greek words, bio and metric. Bio means life, and metric is to measure. It actually measures and analyzes the biological traits of a human being. It could be your iris, which is taken as a biometric, your fingerprint, or your walking style, which can be considered as a biometric. These are all the behavioral or physical characteristics of a human which are considered as biometric for the purpose of authentication. Biometric based authentication systems are able to provide high security against confidential financial transactions and personal data privacy. Why exactly biometric becomes so important is because identity theft is difficult, and we cannot say it is not possible, but it is difficult. Password remembrance problem does not exist, and this cannot be predicted or hacked so easily, and we cannot share our fingerprint with anybody, and this is perceived as more secure when compared to passwords or patterns. So this is how biometric works. We'll have to do biometric presentation by capturing and pre-processing it. For example, whenever you buy a new phone, when you want it to open with the use of your fingerprint, it captures your fingerprint in various angles. Only then that acts as your fingerprint. Or if you want to add a fingerprint, you also have that option. So that happens in this step where you are capturing and doing the pre-processing. So when you capture it is not the actual fingerprint that gets matched. From the fingerprint, certain features are extracted and then a template is created. And whenever you give your fingerprint next, then again a template is created for that. And the two templates are matched. And if they match properly, only then you are authenticated to use a particular application or a device. The common physical characteristics of biometrics or the common biometrics that are used are fingerprint, face, retina, iris, the vein pattern, hand and finger geometry. Some behavioral biometrics are keystroke dynamics, voice, gait. Gait is nothing but walking style, and also the signature dynamics. So, like I explained earlier, the biometric process starts from biometric data collection, then transmission. We'll have to extract features from that and check whether the quality is sufficient. If it is sufficient, then you'll have to generate a template. Otherwise, you'll have to go capture a new sample or a biometric and you'll have to recapture the same. So if the quality is sufficient, then you go on to generate a template. Then this template is matched and then finally a decision is made whether it is really you who is trying to log into your phone or your device. So there are various techniques depending on the biometric used. Also for face recognition, a different it works in a different style. For identification, though the steps remain same, but the features extracted or the way in which works, it is slightly different from one another. This is how vein recognition system works. You take the input, the vein, and then this is the output picture of your hand, then it generates the structure and key features are input into the database. So this is for signature verification. And Aadhaar is one important example for biometric authentication. This establishes uniqueness of resident via biometric deduplication. Only one Aadhaar number is eligible for one individual, like we all know. So here it contains some biometric data like fingerprint, iris, and face. Some of the major applications of biometrics include criminal identification, internet banking, attendance system, airport and bank security, PC login security, financial transaction management, etc. But some of the disadvantages are it is highly expensive, then facial imaging sometimes hinders accurate identification. Sometimes a person may not have an index finger due to some accident, then you cannot capture that particular biometric. And there are a lot of false acceptances and rejections because most of the women do a lot of work in the kitchen where fingerprints are not detected by the fingerprint printers. This is a very common problem most of the women experience. So that is due to false acceptances and rejections. Our systems are not that accurate to capture the important features, even when the fingerprint surface is not very clear. And the scanning of eye is not very, does not, sometimes it creates fear, or it is not medically good or something like that. So that is one disadvantage. The nervousness that people feel about scanners is also prevalent in some users. So these are some of the disadvantages. And the added biometrics today is the DNA identification, and there is voice prints also, which is coming up along with fingerprints, retina, face, palm, handwriting, etc. With this, we come to the conclusion of this topics. Tomorrow, we will learn something about the practicals of multimedia. Thank you all for your patient listening.